Welcome back to the Comics Aficionados. I'm your host, Wes, as always. We got a great preview panel for comics going into 2020. With us first is our X-Men historian and Marvel aficionado, Doc. What's up?
Oh, not too much. Yourself?
Just chilling like a villain. Next, we've got one of our retail aficionados and the nicest angry man in comics. What's up, Perch?
Hey, not too much. Having a great time. Very glad to be on the show this morning with y'all.
And then finally, last but not least, the other retail aficionado, their curmudgeon of thinking critical.
The less friendly one? Yeah. The less friendly retail guy? Yeah.
Hey, the grumpy one.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, guys. So we're just going to run it down. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been announced from Marvel Comics. We're going to hit DC. We're going to hit indie comics. Then there's a topic I know Pele wanted to hit at the end, and I think Perch and Doc will want to talk about it as well as far as comics pricing for collectors. So first up is Marvel Comics. Lots of events and special series coming up in 2020. We got Empyre, Iron Man 2020, Outlaws. Looks like there's an a Venom event featuring the arrival of Null on Earth. An unannounced X-Men event looks like it's coming from incoming. Likely two Spidey related events, at least that's what it's been for the last few years. Also, we've got Dawn of X Wave 2 and 3 featuring giant-sized X-Men, Wolverine, Cable, Hellions, an Untitled Moira X series, and X-Corps. And the reboot of Star Wars that just started this week with the new flagship Star Wars title, Vader, Bounty Hunters, and Dr. Aphra. Doc, which one of these are you most excited about?
Yeah, can you list them again?
It's got to be Wolverine, right?
I would say Wolverine is easily my most look forward to new series of the year. As much as I'm tired of number ones, this is a book that needs one. It hasn't had one for a long time. Wolverine hasn't had a solo ongoing in a while, and honestly, we need to get back to that dynamic of him having a solo ongoing. And, especially after my mild issues with Victor Bogdanovich, that he, went out of his way to make good. He won me over to him too. So yeah, I'm down for this book. Even at the hefty number one price tag.
Yeah, that's eye-watering, but I think it's almost kind of expected at this point, and people just kind of cringe and pay it anyway. So
yeah, I mean, Wolverine's such an iconic character. He hasn't had his own ongoing in 5 years, and Ben Percy's just been really knocking out of the park with X-Force. And they got such a great art team with Bogdanovich, and you got one of the drawing Kuberts in there as well. So should be
I didn't say it wasn't worth it. I didn't say it wasn't worth it. That's something else entirely. It's just I think that it's going to be this series going forward is going to be the real litmus test of how X-Men in the new Hickman era works, and if it either works or it doesn't work. And this is the solo series that people have been waiting for, and it's looks like it's really gonna bang. So we're gonna have to see some things get fleshed out as far as the other titles are concerned. But if they can get Wolverine right, that's a big jump towards getting everything kind of back to level again.
Well, I mean, Wolverine is the X-Man that can carry a solo series. Yeah. Period. He's the only one. And having a good ongoing Wolverine is kind of necessary for a successful X-Men as a franchise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The challenge, what they've got to do with Wolverine, and I hope they do, because this has been something a lot of writers have missed the mark on for a long time with that title. And Doc, and the title has to be consequential. There has to be things that happen in it that truly matter to the character longer term, as opposed to kind of some solo adventures that you could read or not read. And that's been the problem with Wolverine in the past is, the real stuff happened in X-Men, and then Wolverine's kind of adventures often were off to the side. You have to go way back to really get some consequential stories that impacted the character. And Hickman set a bar with X-Men where the stuff in his books matter. And now we're kind of in the aftermath a little bit. We're setting up new storylines and other things. This kind of ties into the thing that was teased in Incoming, which is FF X-Men. And he's got to, in 2020, he's got to make another step toward, here are some big things that you want to show up to the shop for that are going to matter. You can't miss it. You can't come back later. You're going to be spoiled if you don't read it. And so I think that's the tone that Wolverine needs to strike very, very quickly, and X-Men as well by summer.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have the retailers in here. Are people throwing Wolverine on the pull list? Does it look like it's as hot as X-Men or some of those other titles?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. For me, like I said, I'm in between things right now, so I'm seeing things with books, but I'm still trying to take care of a bunch of subscribers that are kind of legacy or sticking with me. That's good. So that, yes, I mean, that's one of the most pre-ordered books I've got right now. In fact, of all the number ones, I'm trying to think if there's another one that people are really all after. I mean, there's heavy interest in whatever DC's Summer Crisis event is, but other than that, I think Wolverine number one's probably the number one pulled right now. I don't know, Pele, what do you?
Yeah, I've got so far. I've probably going to be looking at about a 200 to 250 order as far as by the time everything shakes out. There's a lot. I mean, so many people wanting variants of the variants that have been released, and like that's going to be another kicker as far as this this particular issue is concerned. That people are going to want a lot. People are already wanting a lot of the variants from their favorite artists, Wolverine, over the decades. So and there's a whole lot of baggage there as far as what artists have done what titles over the years. They're all going to want their favorite cover, and that's going to I would be surprised if this is easily 750,000 book as far as.
Yeah, I think so. I think it will get to 750,000. I mean, there's interesting steps. I think it will get to 250. I do believe that because of some of the other ties that they've got going on. So, yeah, I think. I mean, we'll see. It's going to sell well. I think they're doing some partnerships that we don't completely know yet of where this book, kind of like the Loot Crate type deals, and that always boosts them up. Yeah, it's going to do well. Variants are going to do well. I think I'm interested to see. I liked what they did with Thor, where you had a regular version, you had a director's cut version. I do think Marvel should do a lot more of that and use it as a way to reduce the prices on the regular version, and then charge the $10 for the director's cut. People know what they're in for there. Whatever you're going to do, I think that's a cool deal.
Yeah, I would love to see that actually. Have like a $4 number one again. With a really 40-page, an honest to God 30 to 40-page number one for $4, and then a $10 director's cut 80-page thing. That would, and people would buy it. People would buy it like crazy, and that would make all sides of the collecting market happy.
So we got a question from the commenters. They're asking, is there a Silvestri variant?
Not to my knowledge, no. If one,
I've not seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. If one does appear, I think it'll be old found art.
Yeah, I'm betting if they do one, it'll be remastered old art.
Yeah.
All right, so hopefully, but it doesn't look like that's been announced yet.
Yeah, I just looked in the portal. There's nothing there for that right now. So it may appear, but Silvestri is very heads down and doing what he's doing with DC at the moment.
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of people they're like, where's the McFarlane variant? Where's the McFarlane variant? Getting a lot of that.
They already used up the only good McFarlane art for whatever the one with him in the graveyard. Or the woods or whatever the hell it was. They already used that one for one of the other books, so can't really do that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to see. I mean, to that question, that note, I mean, Silvestri draws my favorite Wolverine, I think. I mean, I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting, but I just love his take on it. I've always thought he really nailed the character well, so I would love to see a variant there.
The other one was also Doc on that. They used it for X-Force of all things. The X-Force #1 Todd McFarlane variant was a 1 of 100.
Yeah,
and,
that was what it was.
I was like, oh my God, why did you do that? You know, you could have done that for the Wolverine #1, and you know that would have been something special. But
well, I mean, they can always go back. Remember the early the early issues of Wolverine, like the first probably 20 or 30 issues of the original ongoing series. There was always the Wolverine gallery.
Yeah.
In the back, and they can probably remaster a couple of those pieces because there were some really nice pieces in there. There were some that were meh, but there was some really nice pieces that they could go back and remaster and reuse.
But as far as Silvestri, I'm not seeing anything.
It would have been announced by now, I think.
Yeah.
So, as far as the other, Dawn of X series, it feels like, giant size X-Men should probably be the other big one. What's the feeling with the pull list and subscribers right now? Is that going to be a hot comic as well, Perch?
I think it will be hot. It doesn't have the same amount of interest, and part of it's how it's billed. It's looks and build like annuals or one-offs, and it's not that. I think Marvel's done kind of a poor job marketing what that book is. I know a lot of people were surprised when this Magneto #2 kind of came out and was delayed. They were surprised there was a #2 because the marketing on the book didn't make it sound like that. It was confusingly read. If you read it closely, you realized it was ongoing. There was going to be things here, but it wasn't one that hit people's radar. I think it will increase in volume. My question for that is if Hickman's helming this and it's a bunch of kind of one shots or done in one issues, does that mean he changes up his approach for X-Men, which is also done in one? I mean, at what point do you have both of those going out at the same time, held by the same writer? That's an interesting way to go, and maybe he's just positioning himself as kind of a springboard for other writers to then take his ideas and run with them in other books. But that title still has some work to do, I think, to really make it into what people understand it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a problem there because a lot of people are confused. Like, where does this tie in? People were like asking, like, is this an extension of the X-Men series itself? I'm like, well, it's
we don't know either.
Yeah, it's a thing, and it's got the X-Men in it, and it's I said, well, if you're following the Hickman books, the relaunch, then it's going to make a lot of sense, and I think it's something you'll really enjoy.
Yeah,
that's about that's what I've had to that's what we've described.
No, I think we'll get some good stories out of it. I mean, I'm excited to see it come. I want to see that energy come out in the books, and I think that's really cool. Doc, I think some of the storylines, if you're a longtime X-Men reader, at least some of the other marketing that's come out, some of the stuff that's been sent to shops and retailers has been that this is a book that's really going to try and pick up on maybe storylines that got dropped back in the 80s and 90s, things that just never fully got to where they needed to go, and it's going to fill those stories out. I'd be nervous with maybe other writers making that claim, but Hickman has shown that he's respecting that material. So for me, I'm excited about it, but it needs some work to do to really land.
Yeah, I think it kind of confused people when they call it giant size X-Men. I thought it was going to be like maybe a quarterly title or something, because it did sound like it was going to be more than one issue, but I don't think I don't think they really did themselves any favors when it ended up just being kind of a normal size #1 issue, like 40 pages. But the art talent that they've got is kind of really exciting.
It is. I'm excited for the book. Like I said, I think Marvel with the X-Men line, they did a really good job when you had House of X, Powers of 10, you had the Dawn of X launch. Here's 6 books you're going to want to read. Very neat, very clean. Retailers understood it. Readers understood it. Now, if I held a gun to everybody's head, I think we'd struggle a little bit to say, what are all the X-Men titles that have been announced and will be out by May? They're splintering all over the place, and Fallen Angels is going on hiatus, or it's canceled, or it's coming back at some point. What's going on? The characters are all in other books. It's become very murky in a very quick time span, and they've got to bring that back together.
Yeah, because Fallen Angels is actually kind of a surprise seller, And I just don't know if they weren't paying attention or what's going on, but you know, people actually like that title, and they're, you know, and I know it's probably a creative team problem, but they need to get that sorted out quickly, or they're going to lose some of the momentum.
Well, I mean, I think from everything that's been said, I don't think I'm revealing those secrets here, that they knew there were some gaps coming up in schedule around Brian Hill and other things. And the comic at least was produced in kind of a way where the reader may never notice it. That, you know, you got a couple issues ahead, got the work being done quickly, and, you know, it plays out over 6 months, and then you go on maybe it misses a month and then it's back, or, you know, something else happens. And Marvel decided to shoot these issues out, you know, every 2 weeks. In some cases, you know, one the next week. And so they blew that lead. What the hell?
That's the problem with that you know, rapid fire release schedule, because, you know, when you do end up with a production problem, you do end up with some type of distribution issue, then the gaps are glaring. And it doesn't happen when you have a monthly book. You know, you have, you know, you get 2 or 3 months, you get 2 or 3 issues ahead, and you have a monthly title. Then, you know, if you get on the stick, then you're not going to miss that many issues. You're not going to miss that many release windows. So, you know, that we end up with a situation like we do now, where, okay, great, we had bam, 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 bam. Okay, nothing for like a 2 month period of time, and for everybody, it seems like an eternity. And Marvel started that. That's Marvel's baby.
No, it completely is. And it came, I mean, if you listen to the Hill interview, it was a surprise to him that the schedule was happening. So, I mean, the creators are not even in the loop. But I don't know, Doc, you were going to say something, I think.
Go ahead.
I don't understand, you know, all these come down to is poor publishing decisions.
Yeah.
Now they could have spread out, because let's be honest, so far Fallen Angels, none of the other books have reflected anything that's happened in Fallen Angels.
Yeah.
So it didn't need to get, you know, rapid fire released and double and triple shipped. It just needed to come out once every month for 5 months.
A lot of those characters are moving to other books. You know, Hellions, I believe, has Psylocke. We know that X-23 is going to be, you know, at least a main figure in X-Men for this next issue. So maybe that had something to do with it.
Maybe, but none of the actual story has mattered to those books. Okay, yeah, they're, you know, all you do is you just don't make mention of the stuff that happened in Fallen Angels until actually Fallen Angels is finished.
Right.
But you know, you can do that. But they haven't reflected it at all in any of the books, so everything's been kind of standalone. Nobody knows what the point of all these are. You know, for as much as they were talking about how it was going to be all controlled by Hickman and, you know, wrapped in like this whole overarching narrative, there's no, I have yet to see any narrative cohesion to any of these books.
Amen. Because you're talking about a continuity that, you know, attention to continuity that Marvel really hasn't shown much in the recent past, you know. So, you know, we're not talking about a gap in continuity like, you know, Action 1018. Anyway, you're not talking about weird continuity issues, you know, that's that extreme. I don't understand what's.
Well, you know, to be fair, I think there's enough coordination that they handled the deaths of Xavier. They had that ripple through different books, and there's those kinds of beats. And it's interesting, though, listening to this conversation, it just puts another focus on when you set high expectations for a book, like Hickman did with very tight interwoven story with House of X Powers of 10, then the missteps become all the more glaring. I mean, in all reality, they are all telling their own thing. I agree with the points that the narratives have shifted a little bit, but you compare that to you made the mention. You compare that to Action Comics or some of the other comics going on. They're all over the map, and so if you're going to set a high bar, then you got to maintain that high bar. And I think, you know, bringing back to kind of Wes's original question, X-Men's got a lot of work to do in 2020 to keep that momentum going, especially if they're going to pump out, you know, 4, 5, 6, I think, isn't new books with a promise of, rumor is another 3 to be announced in May. I mean, that's a dozen X-Men books at some point, and that's a lot of wheels spinning. So to keep that quality high, I think is going to be their big challenge.
So the last million shipped comic was Star Wars #1 from Marvel Comics. We know that they just relaunched Star Wars. They've got a new Vader series with Greg Pak, Bounty Hunters with Ethan Sachs. We got a Dr. Aphra coming out. Pele, are you seeing the kind of enthusiasm, and do you think Marvel is going to kind of like fudge the numbers with the way they did with that other Star Wars #1 and try and make the sales in this seem exponentially larger than it really is by throw them in loot boxes and stuff like that?
I think that the latter is going to be really the case here, because I tell you, the whole debacle with Disney and the movies has hurt people's taste for Star Wars right now. And you've got people loving The Mandalorian and stuff. And there's always going to be the diehard Star Wars fans that are going to be buying. But, there's a large contingency of fans out there that are just sick of, they're tired of it. And I'm as surprised as anybody that it would have that much of a downer effect as far as pre-orders are concerned. And it's not where I thought it would be. So I do believe it's going to be a very, very popular comic. I think it's going to do very well, but it's not going to do as well as if it come out at a different window.
Are you seeing that kind of enthusiasm for Star Wars, Wayne, as well in the Northwest, Birch?
Sure. No, absolutely. And it's not, there was a lot. There was just a lot of comics, a lot of attention, a lot of hype, a lot of marketing. I mean, no matter what you do, no matter what title, and people always forget this when they're in the moment, you're going to have a window. You don't just have huge popularity forever. Things come and they go, and new things show up to take their place. And Star Wars has been just ridiculously hyped. I've seen some articles about the hype that Disney did in the marketing and the TV spots and everything else of Star Wars compared to Marvel. And even though Endgame was, their big kind of finish this year, and you had last year, Star Wars still ate up more of their marketing and their press, so despite the fact that Endgame made all that money and Marvel had all this push. So, people are tired. They're looking for something new. And the reality also was when Star Wars #1 launched, you had a pretty top creative team on it. You had John Cassidy coming back and doing some work that was appealing to the comic fans. You had a Star Wars book that hadn't been published by a main company for a while. And you had Disney just marketing the living hell out of it in every channel they could. With this book, they didn't. And, I think they're going to be happy to settle into, 40s to 50,000 numbers for that title. And that's just what they're going to live with. And I don't think that's going to bother them necessarily. But I do think, the question will be in 3 years, what will the Star Wars franchise look like where Disney's concerned, and how the comics are going to be reflected, and, and everything else. But I think the book's good. I mean, as a personal reader, I picked up the new book and I thought it was better than the first issue of the last run. So,
yeah,
hey, good for me as a reader, but it's not going to command the same attention.
Yeah, I've got it sitting right here. I've not read it yet, and I expected I wanted to have it read before this morning, but I hadn't picked it up. I was just
I think it's excellent. I had a lot of fun with it, but it's disappointing. It feels like Disney has just fumbled the Star Wars ball on every facet. With toys, merchandise, comics, the movies. Finally they've got some traction. I think they kind of did okay with the Rebels series, that cartoon, but sounds like they got some good stuff going with the Mandalorian. People are at least enjoying it, but they got a lot of work to do before Star Wars is hot again.
Yeah, and I don't know if banging the drum more loudly is actually going to help them at this point.
No.
That's the interesting part of it, is more average.
How to make people miss it.
Yeah, make people miss it. That's exactly it. And keep in mind, the other thing about this helps you kind of think about Disney as a company as a whole, and I see increasingly Marvel is becoming like their corporate parent, is Disney is an extremely slow-moving company. So they react just slow. They're very methodical in what they do, and the reality is that's worked out pretty well for them. In all honesty, I mean they're not hurting, but
Yeah.
I mean they should have corrected Star Wars faster. They knew it was sliding with the last film and with Solo, and they knew that there were issues, and so now they've got to correct that ship. And we're going to see 2 to 3 years, and then move it around, and then I think we'll see another push. But make them miss it perfectly said.
I mean, it was really telling that they come out with something as hot as Baby Yoda, you know, in the Mandalorian. This is like the biggest thing as far as that toy market, that new IP within Disney, and they missed it. I mean, just talking airball, you know, there was nothing. You know, they hastily went out to, like, you know, shirt manufacturers so they could just get a few different shirt designs out for Christmas. You know, they're, as far as Perch was saying about moving slowly, they're not even going to have any toys on the shelves until like April.
Yeah.
Well, I think the same thing with Baby Groot, I believe.
This is the problem with Hollywood in general. You know, a lot of these Hollywood entertainment companies, they think that they get to decide what is going to be popular. They have no way. They don't put themselves in the shoes of just regular people and figure out what normies actually are going to take to. They have no ability to predict that.
Yeah.
They've gotten worse with what will be organically adopted as things that the audience is going to latch onto, what the general public is going to say, this is the thing that I like. Whereas they're like, well, no, we told you to like this part over here. You need to like this part. No, we like this. Do this.
Yep.
No, we want you to do this. Yeah, this is Hollywood in general. They didn't understand it with the X-Men relaunch. They didn't understand it with Baby Groot. They didn't understand it with Baby Yoda. They don't grasp these things, and they don't think to ask anyone outside of their little media bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a problem. I mean, I've sat in on usability tests, and I've done other things kind of in the other half of my job, and there is a big change that's happened over the last 5 years or so that Hollywood and a lot of these companies have not adapted to, and that's that people are moving a lot faster. The duration time on the internet and how quickly things can trend and then go away is at a pace that just does not at all calibrate to their old ways of doing things, and they have not shifted yet. So they're perpetually feeling behind. They're also in this stage of, is it going to be really popular, or is this a 2-day Baby Yoda is trending and then it's going to vanish, which happens plenty as well. So where they don't know what to do. And unfortunately, they don't, kind of what Doc said, they don't know how to go outside their bubble and find people who do. There's a whole industry there of people who are probably aging out, who don't want to lose their jobs, so they don't know what to do. So there's a big seizure happening within Hollywood of how do you truly capture this stuff. And there's a ton of people right there that are making millions of dollars being high-paid consultants. Wait a minute, what am I doing here? I need to be down there, doing exactly this.
So, you know, just to put a bow up on our Marvel Comics for 2020 preview, you know, Marvel ended up, you know, with the success of House of X, Powers of 10, Dawn of X, Absolute Carnage. It basically drove the comic industry into the green for 2019. It ended up being very successful the last half of the year. Doc, do you think that they're going to keep up the momentum and continue to grow the industry in 2020?
Well, no, they find a way to, every time they start doing something right, to shoot themselves in the foot. And I think they're already doing it. They're doing it to some degree with X-Men, with getting greedy, and double, triple, quadruple shipping titles, and then needing to put other books in, then delay other issues because they're trying to empty their inventory, so they don't have any actual, you know, money just sitting there, that's already been invested but not actually getting a return yet. And then, you know, while they chase the short-term money with Absolute Carnage, and maybe some people are going to come back to the main Venom book, but any opportunity they had to grow the main Venom book got killed by taking the payoff of the first, you know, 15 issues of Venom, 16 issues of Venom out of the main Venom book. You know, while they were able to grow something with Powers of X, House of X, and and then also Absolute Carnage, they also hurt themselves because they chased the short money. And I think they're going to do that again because they always do it.
All right, Paley, what are your thoughts? Do you think that Marvel is going to continue on the momentum and grow business in 2020?
Grow? I think that I think they'll be fortunate that they maintain right now. Some of these titles, frankly, most of the titles that have come off of the X-Men, reboot have just stubbed their toe and, right out of the gate and just, if not face planted, at least set themselves back. And I'm already seeing just drops as far as, pull list numbers and like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Oh, this isn't any good. Oh, I don't like this artist, and it's already happening, long, not too long ago, but a while back, people would just sort of, okay, well, I'm going to take a wait and see. I'm going to take a look, maybe I'll make a decision in a few months. I'm just going to keep getting it. And now that prices are what they are and expectations are what they are, then they've created a fan base that's once they have once they put out a really good quality product, they're going to start demanding that product for their money. And I'm very concerned going forward that just as quickly as they gained this massive, huge influx of readership and everything for the X-Men, they could lose it again. Yeah. And it's kind of like one of those things that I don't like sitting there 3 to 4 months out ordering, with the full knowledge that things could turn around as quickly as they began.
Mm-hmm. All right, Perch, you're the last one. What are your prognostications for 2020 in Marvel Comics? Do you think it looks like it's trending in the right direction for this year?
I think if you look at the past and you use that as an indicator, then 2020 should be up for Marvel. And I say that because, buying habits of people, they'll come in, they'll get a title. Customers drop off, certainly I think in Pele's experience, pricing the same. People will drop off quickly, but most collectors will go to a number. They'll go to 6 or they'll go to 10. They'll go to some even number they can justify. And I think that's going to carry Marvel in many ways through 2020 because they have a brand new Thor out. You've got a couple of events in their sleeve. The stuff they're hyping for incoming, I think, will be largely a dud. But X-Men will carry them somewhat. Thor's going to boost sales. Venom will do some things. If they get that other series out, Spider-Man's going to do something big toward the end of the year with maybe retconning one more day. Who knows? But I think that carries the risk.
Thank God.
Well, who knows? Or, Spencer screws everybody by killing her. But in the worry, if you look at history, is that these tactics tend to not impact the immediate year, but the year after. So the worry is 2021, because that's when subs die off, people abandon, things go away, oversaturation hits again. And if they spend 2020 looking at as, hey, we still need to grow. So let's find let's do for the Avengers, what House of X did. Let's double down on some of these series and make them really can't miss comics. Let's do some marketing things where maybe we lower the prices of some books so we get more coverage. I mean, that's what they need to spend 2020 do, not resting on its laurels because they have a bunch of things in the pipe. My prediction is Marvel will do that. They'll rest and they'll kind of pat themselves on the back, and then you'll see a down year in 2021 that could be worse than what we saw in 2016.
Interesting. All right, so that'll wrap up our Marvel coverage. Now it's time to talk about the other comic publisher that's in the big two, DC Comics. They've got an upcoming new event from Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo that ties in You're the Villain and Justice Doomward that eventually is going to lead into DC Comics 5G initiative that we've been hearing about. Tom King, one of their best-selling writers, has Batman, Catwoman, and Strange Adventures miniseries. Tom Taylor's deceased sequel, Unkillables, comes out, and Bendis, Brian Michael Bendis is continuing to expand his DC Comics reach in 2020. We see that, through the solicitations. And also DC Black Label is looking to expand, led by Jeff Johns' much-anticipated 3 Jokers and Sean Gordon Murphy's expanding Murphyverse. Pele, which one of those do you think is the most important thing for DC Comics in 2020?
Jeff Johns. Anything with Jeff Johns. Oh my God. You know, we really need the good writers back at DC. And Sean Gordon Murphy's work has been solid. It's been very, very good. Everybody, I'm not going to say everybody. People are so sick of King and Bendis. They really are. They're sick of their crap. And, you know, they want anything that will kind of wash the taste out of their mouth from having to deal with those yucks, chuckleheads for the last 2-3 years. So, you know, it's really reached a point to where, you know, as far as what I've seen and customers that I've talked to, you know, they're like, oh, King's doing that. Oh, I don't think I want that. You know, oh, Bendis is involved. No, I don't think I want that. So it is a phenomenon now. It's turning into, you know, a situation where I have no idea. You know, I've got my manager on ordering that because I have no idea what's going on, and it could be huge. I doubt it. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm very, very concerned going forward because DC's in a bad place right now. And the King situation, as far as Batman and Catwoman, I'm not seeing any interest. I'm not seeing any interest in Bendis going forward. You know, it's just they have run those titles into the ground, those characters into the ground, and you know, it's I'm not sure how long it's going to take to recover. You know, I know this is a real downer, but you know, I'm very, very concerned. Black Label, you know, is a bright spot. You know, I think that there's a lot of really good potential there as far as sales, as far as good products going forward. You know, Tom Taylor does really know how to do those deceased books. He's good with those zombie, you know, apocalypse titles. So, you know, I think that could do really well for DC, but you know, I'm very, very concerned about, you know, the staples of DC going forward into 2020.
Yeah, you know, DC Black Label, it's kind of weird right now, but I am amped up for 3 Jokers. I've been, you know, Jason Fabok's been putting out the preview art, and the Murphyverse is just such a bright spot for DC Comics right now. You know, Perch, do you see 3 Jokers being like the breakout hit, you know, kind of like Doomsday Clock, you know, but on a smaller scale because it's going to be 3 issues?
Yeah, I mean, not like Doomsday Clock, but I think it will fit in that same kind of Murphyverse sales-wise. I think people will like it. Collectors will like it. I think it's going to be a bit of a hard pitch to kind of non-comic readers. I mean, Doomsday Clock could say, hey, Watchmen, and it brought some additional attention. I think 3 Jokers will struggle a little bit with that, but as a fan, I think it's going to be a pretty amazing book. I think it will do well. I think we'll see somewhere somewhere sub Last Night on Earth, but somewhere in that range, and that will be great for DC. I think the name that wasn't mentioned in that was I think Snyder and Capullo will be the big thing in DC proper with their kind of sequel to Metal, Pseudo, what's going to happen with You're the Villain and all that. I think that's going to be the big moment. The place to watch DC will be, you know, even though everybody's friendly to each other, and I'm not trying to start trouble between anybody here, or not here, but in that group, is you look at what Bendis is doing with Superman, and you look at what Snyder is doing, and the two, from a reader perspective, do not seem well coordinated. And I know there's been summits, and there's been a lot of planning, and people have talked to each other and everything else, but it doesn't come off that way to a reader. It comes off as 2 separate visions kind of going off. And I think that comes to a head with this event of, okay, so who's going to follow suit, or is it going to continue to feel discordant? And the danger to DC is that in their core line, it feels to readers like nobody is planning anything. Kind of worse than the X-Men problem by far. This is where it's just all over the place. And that's a problem, especially if it does not have the Black Label on it, and it is Black label on it, and it is a DC proper. They've got to make these things work, especially if we're going into a coordinated 5G kind of universe. if that 5G universe is kind of helmed by Bendis, and it gives the impression to the readers that, hey, we had this big event that was kind of exciting, and it had Capullo, we love him, and Snyder was helming it, and a lot of high energy stuff going on, and then, oh, but none of that matters because we're into 5G right now, and hey, this is what actually matters, which is how these things have been received. That's going to flop pretty bad. Now, King, I think, is somewhat out of the equation now. He's Batman, Catwoman's going to be in its own little pocket. It's fine. And Strange Adventures is also, it's in its own little pocket. So the battle's not going to be there. It's going to be what's going to happen between Snyder's vision and Bendis's vision, and do they come together at the end of the year? I hope they do. As a reader, and I've said this to a couple of people now, and I always get surprised within the industry of like, oh, really? No, we're coordinating. To a reader, it does not feel that way.
I feel like they're coordinating. They're just not actually doing anything with it. They can talk all day long. Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. You should do this. You should do that. You need to do this. You need to do that. Okay. And then never do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like you got the latest issue of Action Comics, and we've got this battle going on in Justice League where the Legion of Doom is there, and they're doing their thing, and the heroes are on the ropes, and it's going to be a big challenge. And over in Action Comics, it's like it's a completely different battle that's being presented. Is it the same battle? Who knows? We can't really tell. And then, suddenly Leviathan is one of the main villains here. He was the one who was kind of pulling the strings. He's the important one in that book. But over in the Justice League, there's no Leviathan at all. That character doesn't even show up. So Snyder spends, God, now, I mean, how many issues and years building Luthor into this threat, and whether you like it or not, that he's this white Martian hybrid thing and Perpetua and all the rest, whether you like it or not, that's the story that was put forward. And so in Action Comics, when it's like, oh yeah, Leviathan is actually doing it, it's my villain that's more important, it leaves a very sour taste in the mouth of the reader.
Yeah, I mean, they invested so much into the villain status of Perpetua. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a universe threat. This is a universe level threat. You know, and oh no, it's not Perpetua at all anymore.
And you say this to people, and they're like, oh, but it will all come together in the end. That's not how it's going to play out. Now, I mean, that's fine and cool. And I want this please, the people don't understand. We want this landing to stick. Nobody is rooting for DC to fail. They want this to work. So I get that maybe there's a lot of planning. I get that maybe there's a lot of coordination and people are friends and all the rest. But it's not coming across that way to readers. To readers, they pick up and they're like, what the hell is going on? That's the reaction. And that's got to get fixed.
So, Doc, I do want to ask you one question about the Murphyverse, and we'll kind of get back to some of the other bigger things. You are a really big Sean Gordon Murphy fan, correct?
I am, yeah.
All right, so in the Murphyverse, we got Curse of the White Knight going on. We've had the one shot from about Victor Von Fries. When this thing expands, Sean Murphy isn't going to be writing and illustrating all these comics. Are you still going to be a customer of the Murphyverse when it's not his name that's on the title anymore?
I think I will, because I mean, assuming he's essentially acting as kind of an editor, I'm willing to give it a shot and see him kind of handle a team doing work within his vision of where because to me, the Murphyverse feels the way that DC should feel. It feels a little darker, but not like, not Zack Snyder dark. It feels a little darker, but it feels like there's some stakes. It feels like the characters are the same. And I hope that he's able to find talent that is able to keep people, in that kind of, that keeps presenting the characters in a uniform fashion, because I think he can actually manage a team. Whereas, Bendis, look, let's be honest, he has an editor, but that editor's job is about, it's basically just make sure he turns in his work. They don't actually edit anything. There's no way that he actually is being edited. Mm-hmm. And with the way he just brings over his little crew wherever he goes. He just tells them what to do, and it doesn't matter what their editors say either.
I don't want to interrupt you here, but we do have a $9.99 super chat from SSJ Future Gohan 62093, also known on the channel as Josh. We've done some really cool in-depth character studies. We've done some really fun looks at DC events. We just recorded a Murphyverse video as well, where we're going to go in depth on that. And he says there is no coordination at DC right now. Bendis is doing his own thing. So others like Snyder, there's no coordination. Rebirth had coordination, which is one of the main things that made it great. I couldn't agree with that more.
Well said.
Haley, is that what you're feeling from customers as well, where they're confused by the DC universe? Like, are they no longer talking to each other?
Yeah, it's there's no cohesion there. Nobody understands any of this. It's what we were talking about, the continuity issues as far as X-Men. That's nothing compared to the continuity problems that DC has. It is. I'm afraid that Marvel could get like that, but it's not even close. And you look at these, it reads like entirely two different labels right now, and the one hand absolutely does not know what the other one is doing, is basically what I'm trying to say. There's no editorial actually doing their jobs, and it's confusing. It's absolutely confusing. I can't get into it now because I don't know what's going on. If I don't know what's going on and I'm actually in this, what hope, what is a regular customer, what hope do they have? It's like, which book should I be reading now? Which ones go together? Which ones, and you should be able to just pick up a book, and have some of the titles sort of kind of go along with it. But now that you have, it's like what Perch was saying earlier about how, is this the same battle that's going on between Justice League and, and in action,
Mm-hmm. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
It's tough. I've talked to a lot of people involved. Most of the names we're mentioning, and you get the same story, which I believe. I just want to say I believe that they say, oh, we're doing summits. In some cases, we're flying a bunch of people out to people's houses to do summits, and we're talking, and we're on the phone, and we're sharing emails, we're sharing ideas, and it's like, okay, that's happening. I believe them, but it's not coming across in the end product. And one thing here I'll just toss in for the sake of being fair about everything, the editor situation at DC is in a bad state right now. And when I say that, I mean they're overworked. You've got too few people. Yeah, they're very, very overworked, and I think there's a burnout effect that happens. There's a lot of shifting changes and the move to WB and some of the mandates that come down. It's a crazy time. So I pity those people. They're not they're struggling right now. Absolutely.
And I have to say, come on, you have Andy Corey on staff. What in the hell does he actually do? Except for make more problems. So
there's a lot of issues there, and I think. There's something that's missing, and this is a time, hopefully, whether it's a Dan Didio or a Jim Lee or somebody in the group needs to come in and say, guys, we are doing all these things, and we're not landing our message. There's a miss. You look at Leviathan. I think, I wasn't the biggest fan of that whole event, but I will give Bendis credit, and he crafted this story, and he created a mystery, and there were a lot of people. A lot of people were trying to guess it, looking for the clues, people sending me theories. Great, that engagement is wonderful, but then why no coordination with the other books and the other writers? Why if you're going to do this and you are going to have that event, why not do more with it? Why keep it in its own little pod? That's the thing that's missing. And I think the message of if anyone from DC, a fan or somebody who's employed or is listening to this right now, just know that I believe you. You are doing things. It's not hitting the readers. It's not hitting the shops. We're not getting the results of your effort. So something needs to shift. The strategy needs to change.
Yeah. So I'm glad that we have the two retailers here. Pele is based in Tennessee, more of a southern kind of heartland area. Perch, you're in the Northwest. Two different kind of audience. They're all comics fans. 5G is right around the corner. DC's, beginning to hype it up. It's going to come after the Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo event. Perch in the Northwest, which should be more amenable to these changes and to these new characters taking over the mantles of the heroes of DC. Is there enthusiasm? Is there buzz generating for that?
No. I mean, I would say no. I think the Northwest audience is probably, I would say the paying people, it's probably 60 to 70% very similar to Tennessee. And I would gather I've talked to enough retailers, enough groups around the country, there's a kind of a 60 to 70% bleed over in all regions. And these are just comic collectors. These are people who want a good story. They get connected to something. They like whatever it might be, Hulk, Flash, X-Men, whatever they are. They're folks like Doc who are longtime X-Men readers or whatever their favorite comic is, and they just stick with it, and they know that lore. And then it's that extra little bit at the top, which I always classify as casual. These are people who are coming in based on the interest, maybe of the region or kind of what they're into. But these are not people you can necessarily count on. As a retailer, your goal is to try and flip them from being casual into that other group so you can rely on them. And the Northwest has, and I'm Seattle area, it has a heavy amount of people who will come in and casually go, oh, this looks fun. And you can tell when they're buying it. You're still nice to them. You're still hoping they'll convert one day, but you can tell they're probably not coming back. Or if they do, they're never going to really buy comics that much. And that group is pretty tepid to 5G. One, they don't even know really it exists. And two, there is a burnout factor similar to what we were talking about with Star Wars, where the young generation of new hero, new and all different and exciting, it's running its course. And I think that's the fear I have for 2021 is you're seeing both companies do more around, hey, let's put the pedal down on more of these kind of brand new unknown heroes, kids coming up, more diverse. It's not the diversity is not the problem. It's the unknown that's the problem. And those tend to attract casual fans. They tend to not attract that 60 to 70% base. And the casual fans are not reliable, don't come back for issues. There's very few people who will go and say, oh, I've never read comics before in my life, but here's Naomi. This looks interesting to me. I will now become a lifelong comic reader. That's not how it tends to work. So, I'm not seeing the enthusiasm for it. I'm worried that it's coming at the very tail end of whatever this bump was for new heroes, young heroes, and it's going to miss that. That's my fear. I don't know. Pele, is that what you?
Yeah, that 100%. The bleed over as far as customers are concerned, you've got that, like you said, that 60, 70%. They're just fans. They want good writing. They want good stories. They love their characters. And one major problem that I see is just the total lack of regard for the established character base, the established characters. And that's what I'm seeing a lot right now is people are going, what's going to happen? Everybody's concerned about what's going to happen to their favorite characters, with the whole 5G movement and all the brand new characters, brand new series, that scares them because they're like, what? I'll still be able to get Batman, right? I'll still be able to get Superman. I'll still be, hopefully with different writers, why don't they just fix Batman? Why don't they just fix Superman? Instead of, a new Superman, a new Batman, a new whatever, and they don't care. They really, the people that I've talked to literally do not care about a new, younger, exciting, take on the characters. They as far as I'm talking about new, completely new characters, like a new, more diverse Batman, new, more diverse Superman. They really want their old characters. They want those characters to be in a better place, more so than have this complete relaunch. And this is something that I see that DC could absolutely screw up. I mean, just destroy, what tentative, acceptance that they still have, among the broader reader base as a whole. And it worries me. It really, really does. I was in a much better space as far as DC was concerned last year. And now, I see stuff like 5G when they don't even, have their feet firmly on the ground with the existing titles, and I'm like, this could be really a bad situation. And I know I'm sounding like a curmudgeon again, but
you're you're not that far off. The thing is, it comes back to, media companies attempting to dictate what people are going to like, and they rather than, they come up with Naomi. Okay, well, has she really been popular? I don't know. Not really. No, I don't really. I mean, she has a little bit of a following, but no more than Riri Williams did, or Jubilee did back in the 80s. And you don't just decide that because we created this character, you need to like her or him or whomever, and we're going to replace the character that you actually like with this person, and you're going to keep buying it.
Yeah,
that's not how it works. They tried to do this with, remember what was it like?
All right, I gotta interrupt you. We got another $4.99 super chat from Josh. Preach Pele. I worked in a comic shop for a few months, and not once did I have anyone ask me for what was new. They want these established characters. Absolutely. You can introduce new stuff, but you can't do it at the expense of the characters and the settings that people love. So the one final thing I want to talk about DC Comics before we get into our predictions for 2020 is this event, that we know is coming up with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Those two are magic together. The last time they did a big event, it was Metal. Sounds like this is going to be bigger, and Metal was extremely successful. Paley, do you see with the current state of DC and where people know what's going forward, do you think that this new event that's finishing up the Year of the Villain and Justice Do More, do you see it being and finishing off kind of what was started in Dark Knight's Metal? Do you see it being as successful as Metal itself?
I don't. I think that it's. I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten a lot of what was, a lot of what was going on with that. They really enjoyed the series. The Capullo's got an incredible amount of fans, but I'm I like everybody else kind of worried about, where is all this, where it's going, I mean, Perch, what are you seeing right now as far as any excitement for?
I think there's a lot. I'm seeing a lot of excitement. I'll make a kind of a different prediction. I think that this Dark Crisis, or whatever it winds up being called, I think that it will do better than Metal, actually.
Okay.
My fear is that it's what you don't want to have as a publisher or a writer is people viewing something as a jumping off point. And my fear is, with everything that's going on, and especially the transition to 5G, it sets up a really, really nice jumping off point. And that you get a lot of people who will show up to the table for the end. And so if this Dark Metal event is going to be viewed as DC's end game, to some extent, that's bad news. So I think it will do well, but I think a lot of people are looking at it as a conclusion. And I've heard a lot of customers and people at polls saying, I'm in it till then. And that statement scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, because it's basically saying, okay, we're wrapping up the stories of the characters you give a damn about, and we're just going to replace them all with a bunch of new people that we decided you're going to like, instead of letting it happen organically. And the people are going to be like, okay, well, the chapter of the characters that I like is over. Yeah. So why am I going to stick around?
Mm-hmm.
And to that extent, I mean, I've had to say so many times online, we both have. I mean, I've been on West, we've done a video about this, of people who are feeling like 5G is an ending, or we've had to reassure people, I mean, a lot, that this is temporary. And we know this. I have proof. We know that this is temporary, but still people are viewing this as, oh, is this going to be the replacement forever of comics? Well, I'm out. And so I think that I'm going to just keep calling it Dark Crisis for the time being, because that's what I've heard a working name is. But if that lands really well and it sets up a huge tease for great storylines, not just of new characters, this 5G world, but also the main DC universe proper, awesome. They'll have done their job. They'll keep people. But right now, it feels like an end, and that's not good.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll kind of put a bow on our DC Comics coverage, of what we're looking forward to and some of the stuff. Now let's do our look at our predictions. 2019 is a weird year for DC Comics. If you look at it as a total, they put in austerity measures for a while, so they cut back from shipping 80 comics a month, down to like 50, 52 at some points. So the amount of comics they shipped that were new was really down, but DC Black Label cover prices are really big compared to normal comics for the most part. There's a couple of them that are normal price, but the big ones that had a lot of interest. So, they aren't quite as down as dollars wise as much as some people might think. I don't believe that they had as successful a year as Marvel in terms of sales. Doc, you're not as big a DC fan as you are Marvel. Do you think DC Comics is going to be in the green, and maybe with that event that Snyder and Capullo were on are going to be able to drive momentum forward and maybe have some growth in 2020?
I think that you'll get, as what Perch said, you'll get the people coming in that might be coming back for an ending. And even, because it wraps their character's story up with a little bow. And even if it teases their return in the not too distant future, you're going to get those people that come back, and that will be good for sales. The problem is, I think you're going to be falling off a cliff immediately afterwards.
Whoops.
And depending on when they release it, I don't know what their release schedule for this thing. Yeah. Okay. So if it finishes up right near the end of the new year, you'll have that nice big spike.
Dawn of X, House of X, Absolute Carnage bump.
Yeah, you'll have that bump in the third or fourth quarter, and then it will immediately fall off a cliff. So you're end of 2020, beginning of 2021 will make 1996 look like a day at the beach.
Yeah.
All right.
Somebody was talking about Doomsday Clock. That's really it. That's it right there. If DC had any brains whatsoever, they would go with Doomsday Clock and just say, okay, we're establishing everything going forward based on Doomsday Clock. We're going to reshape everything. And if they had any brains whatsoever, they would do this.
Wow.
I'm honest to God here. I'm not joking. The what's going on right now, as far as DC is concerned, seems so fractured and so shattered, and people are so confused as to where DC is going and what the characters. This Jeff Johns did an incredible job wrapping this up, setting things into motion for a soft reboot, I guess you could say, of the DC universe with the way the Doomsday Clock ended. And to not go with that, to not, use that as a stepping off and a ramp, to me just seems,
Crazy.
It just seems.
So you think this is going to lead to more momentum and growth in 2020, or do you think that people are going to see the writing on the wall and maybe start stepping away from DC Comics?
I think that if they don't look to the different talents, and they go with the current talents that they have now and listen to those people, that DC is in serious trouble.
Mm-hmm. All right, Perch, you're the last one. You're the last prognosticator. What do you see in DC's future for 2020 as far as growth and progression?
No, I think that we'll see a build through the year while this Dark Crisis event gets ramped up. I think the Lex Luthor, Batman Who Laughs thing will do very well. I think Three Jokers will be received well. I think you'll see some of that. And like I said, I think that the trick for them will be what happens in November, December, kind of as this event wraps up. I'm not sure I've got the timing right. I think it may go a little longer than that, but when it moves from one thing to another, I mean, that's like I said before, that's where the risk hits for them. That's where they've got to really make sure they're sticking their landing, having a couple other things in the pipe, maybe being a lot smarter. Maybe this is the year that, in parallel with this, DC hires some really smart marketing people, some really smart business people who are going to look and say, all right, we need to change the game. We need to actually have a coherent digital strategy. We need to have a better pricing strategy to attract new talent, do something more with trades. We've got to change the game up rather than just following forever in Marvel's shadow. I think that the giant exodus and purge of talent and layoffs and everything that occurred in '78, so way back when, from DC, has a very high chance of repeating itself if right around 2021, if 5G comes out and they haven't lined up just amazing talent to be on those books and really kind of sunk the hook with readers, that's trouble. So that's a lot of doom and gloom. I have faith that Capullo and Snyder can stick the landing with their book. I actually have a lot of faith in that. I just worry that they stick the landing and it is a landing and then it's over. That's my worry.
Yeah. All right. So we're moving on from DC Comics. Now let's talk about the indie comic scene. A lot more publishers, a lot more books, a lot more things going on. But I'm trying and wrap up, some of the bigger things that I've heard and I've seen that are coming in 2020. Scott Snyder recently announced he's got more creator-owned indie comic properties coming in 2020. Of course, Undiscovered Country through Image Comics with Charles Soule and Camo came out in 2019. Seems like it's been very successful so far. So more Scott Snyder stuff on the indie scene sounds like a big deal to me. The expected return of Image Comic sales juggernaut Saga from Brian K. Vaughan looks like it's probably going to happen. I know when it went on a hiatus about 18 months ago that they said it would be between 12 and 24 months. So that will end, during the summertime of 2020. So I would expect to see Saga probably back if they're going to be able to keep their timeline. And then there's also the potential insolvency of IDW Publishing that's always been looming over them. They are deep financial troubles. That's the number 4 publisher in the industry. And then you kind of have the jockeying behind the big 3. And one thing that I'm loving is the emergence of Vault Comics. Perch, what do you think is going to be the big thing that drives indie comics in 2020?
I think we'll see an acquisition toward the end of the year of somebody like Dark Horse by Marvel. I can go into more of that later, but I think you will see that occur for a large number of reasons, which is kind of a weird place to start. But I think creator-owned books are going to be strong. I think Saga is great. Comic shops will love that when that comes back. I think that Kirkman's growing Skybound in a really nice and organic way. I'm curious to see when the Miller World stuff starts hitting Netflix in a big way, and Netflix actually starts putting some marketing dollars behind the properties they acquired, which is supposed to be around summer of this year. We're supposed to see a lot of a big boost there, so it'll be interesting how that changes the mix and if that presents potential conflicts with Image. I think there's a chance that happens as well. So I think there's a number of things going on. I think crowdfunding was an interesting story in 2019 and 2018. I think in 2020, mature is maybe the wrong word, but it's got to move to another step of reliability or kind of move past kind of fan-produced comics to an actual business. I don't mean to insult anybody when I say it that way. It's just crowdfunding is still in that amorphous state that it needs to bump up on to really be a player in this indie world. And other than that, I mean, where indies suffer, and you are seeing some stuff going on. A couple people are getting reached out to by people like Boom and Vault to help try and consult and do what I said DC needs to do, reach out and figure out in this new world, in this new kind of way comics are sold and consumed, how do you get ahead? If you're small and nimble, how do you do things that Marvel and DC can't do? How do you take more risks or go to some of these other platforms? I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. And I think you'll see some names from Twitter that, we follow and see that will kind of be a presence there in that industry. It's been a closed industry. Some of the small guys are tired of being small and not making enough money. And so I think they're going to look outside for some talent to help them do that. As for IDW, I mean, they've got to get some money here by, what is it, April or May? I think they've got to find another round somewhere. So I think they'll continue to teeter. I don't think they're going to fall off the edge, but Unfortunately, the principals in that company are getting more and more devalued when they have to go and raise more money and get more money. And eventually, at some point, it just gets to be not interesting for a lot of the people who started the company. And then all bets are off of what happens. That's me. I don't know. I don't know if Wes is there, but Doc or Pele, what are you guys thinking?
Pele, you wanna?
Okay, let me jump into this. I think that certain titles like these Savage Shores, I think that the explosion of interest in horror comics, led by the indie market, has been amazing. Some of those titles are just absolutely fantastic, and I think that within a certain framework, as far as how, what's the best way to put this, how we as retailers can present those books and present those particular publishers is going to change the perception. I'm not really change the perception, but look at the way that that those particular titles are. I'm not really coming across very well on this one.
Marketing. It's kind of what we said. It's how, as retailers, we get people to realize these books exist, and it's that.
Well, I think 2020 is going to see a little bit of a contraction in indie, because I think a lot of these publishers are going to realize that the Netflix money, what AMC or whomever else is out there isn't as profitable as they'd like. I think you're going to see, and that they actually need to remember that comics is their core business. I think a lot of them, a lot of these indies have forgotten, and I think Marvel and DC to an extent too, and Image have forgotten that at the end of the day, comics is still their core business. Their secondary or tertiary business may be more profitable, but comics, if they cannot survive as comics, they should not be produced as comics. And you're going to start seeing some of the I guess you could say the creators that are obviously aiming at Hollywood with their works. You're going to see more of them just go straight to Hollywood, and they're going to flame out there. They might get a couple of years of working in a writer's room somewhere, but I think a lot of them will flame out. However, I think that you're going to start seeing, so the obvious Netflix bait shows or comics, I think some of those are going to leave. And I think you're going to see companies like, IDW. IDW is going to have a lot of problems this year. I really do believe so. And I think you're already seeing it with companies like Black Mask. Black Mask is already essentially starting to collapse, and because they're not selling books, and that's the problem. A lot of these things they don't have they're books without markets, and even try as you might to get people interested in them, they still don't have markets. There's not a sustainable number of people because there's too many things that are similar-ish. It's like having 4 million channels, and there's still only so much entertainment money and entertainment time that people are going to invest, and there just isn't enough out there. The market's not big enough to sustain it as fat as indie has grown in the past, probably 5 or 8 years. It's not sustainable. That's where I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was a 2018 kind of myth or gold rush for Netflix and for streaming services, and you saw it with MilkFed and what. I mean, Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue basically kind of gave the finger to big parts of the industry and said, "We're going to get our own money because we're going to get that Netflix money." And we signed a bunch of deals, and those have all now, by and large, evaporated.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sex Criminal series on Netflix. I mean, I don't know if everybody's seen it. It's amazing. But somebody in the chat's going to blame me for that. It does not exist. That was a joke.
I was about to say, wait, I didn't even think it existed.
The money's not there. And so a lot of these companies, I mean, this is IDW's problem. They kind of built themselves on the premise of, hey, we're going to go get licensing deals and we're going to be the feeder of talent to the streaming services. And now it's like, well, a lot more streaming services have emerged, but they're not going to comic companies like ours. They're not going to the old guys. It's almost in a weird way the same thing that kind of happened with the infamous Marvel Creative Reviews group and Kevin Feige, where he eventually said, "Yeah, I don't need this," and they're just developing their properties with one-offs or with people who actually know how to do it. Like Scott Snyder very rapidly gets Undiscovered Country tapped for a series. That stuff will happen, but it's not going to happen through the publisher in this other way. And you cannot be nuts and arrogant coming out of comics and expect Hollywood to roll out the red carpet for you. That will not occur.
So do you think Disney acquired Marvel, AT&T ended up acquiring DC, along with the Warner Brothers transaction? They got big plans for streaming. Do you see other streaming services trying to acquire some of these publishers with some of the IP that maybe they want to produce, but they don't want to kind of be beholden to somebody that they don't have creative control over?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like what we're seeing. We're talking about. I think you've got Netflix out there. They got Miller. I don't think they believe they need more than that. They're going to tap occasional things like the Umbrella Academy and stuff like that, but I think they're happy to work with kind of individual creators. They have their guy in Miller, and that's what they're going to do. So now, the only really big player left on the board is Apple in terms of a streaming service. And, is Apple going to go to an IDW? No.
Apple IDW doesn't have any.
All their valuable IPs aren't there.
License.
Right. Yeah, it's not theirs. So that's a major problem for them. So then who does that leave?
Sony has Valiant.
Yeah, Sony has Valiant already. And so, there's certainly maybe something that could be done there, but more likely what you'll see with, and again, we're just being realistic. We've got Disney Plus, that's going to be Marvel, and whoever else they acquire. And like I said, they're going to acquire one more because they need another one. DC is going to go with WB for a while, and maybe they pick up, a title or two. But there's plenty to mine at DC, and that's why Johns is going to be distracted. And then you've got Netflix, which has Miller World and just occasional properties they're picking up, but they're already trying to scale back because they overcommitted themselves. So we are left with Apple. That's it.
Amazon Prime has some Brubaker stuff.
Sorry, I definitely forgot Prime. So Amazon has Brubaker stuff. I think Amazon and Apple will look very much the same in that they're going to go to specific creators that own stuff, which primarily is going to come out of Image. And they're going to make those deals as one-off deals, and that's how they're going to do it. But interestingly enough, both those companies, in terms of their personality, their culture, their soul, will not respect big, arrogant comic creators coming in. And this is exactly the buzzsaw that I think that Fraction and Kelly Sue ran into. That culture doesn't work with those two companies. So that's why you will see a Scott Snyder. I think you're going to see Kirkman do very well over there. And I think that's what the future holds.
Please, somebody develop Criminal for a streaming service. Like the perfect set of books and everything for it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think
I can't imagine that doesn't show up on Amazon within 2 years.
Yeah, I think that right now, I think 2020 is going to be the word I was trying to think of before is consolidation, more so than more so than expansion or more so than growth. It's going to be a time of consolidation where a lot of these disparate titles, that from publishers that are doing really well, but the publishers on the whole only have like a couple of eggs, in their basket. They're going to have to consolidate with other publishing houses and bring all of those together, and to strengthen their positions overall, so they can actually be healthy in the market.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I said contraction.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
The consolidation there, like say you get some,
But my point was that in the process of, consolidating into, the way that Oni and Lionforge merged, you're going to see a lot more of that with these small indie publishers, the ones that don't just fold up shop. And in the process, a lot of the similar style books that might not be telling the exact same story, but a similar genre and a similar-ish story, you're going to wipe out one of them. If two companies merge and they're both putting out a book that's kind of this, maybe a sci-fi, alien story, or a story about social media stuff, or and they have two of those, one of them's dead, one of those is canceled, one of them is not getting published anymore, and that means you're going to end up seeing a lot fewer overall titles, because you're going to need only about, let's be honest, you need about 20 publishers total, not 70. And
the interesting one to watch, I think, in the context of this whole conversation, is the Axel Alonso Artisans book, which has a J. Michael and I mean, it has some interesting people there. That's the one that will be very fascinating to see if that clicks, because that company there's no illusions to how it's produced. It's completely designed as a vehicle for film and for properties. They wear that on their sleeve. They're producing comics for the sole purpose of taking them elsewhere, and they say we're going to create really, really high quality comics for the purpose of them going elsewhere. So what they've got to do now is pop that going elsewhere in the next 12 months. And I think a lot of people in the industry are going to look at them and kind of see where that all lands. I think it's going to be a bit of a harder job than they think, but they have, I mean, Alonso's been quiet now for 2 years, working completely on setting up these relationships. Now we get to see if he was able to do it.
So, Perch, there's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. When Valiant was essentially bought by a Chinese media company, I think it's DMG, they essentially bought it because they wanted the rights to the movies for production, because they already had a deal with Sony. If Bloodshot doesn't pop, if it isn't a hit, does that leave Valiant kind of flapping in the wind, where this company that only wanted the movie rights, if it turns out they're not profitable, are they just going to try and unload the company because the IPs aren't valuable for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the interesting thing to watch with Bloodshot will be how it performs internationally, because a lot of people are, I mean, I think that's where they want the growth, and that's where they want to see it happening, which, you could say that's true of all companies. That's true of Disney. That's true of everybody else. But it's going to be much more of an international play than, kind of like what happened with Michael Bay's Transformers films, where a lot more attention were being put on those markets than domestic. They still made money, but that's where the play is at. So if it flops internationally, I think that's a real bad sign. And I think that's a big problem. But, it's funny in the chat, Doc is saying, and maybe wants to expand on it, that, I just want comic publishers to actually give a shit about publishing comics and remember that as their core business. I mean, me too. I think that the silly part of all this is that if you don't have a core base, if you don't have a great platform, then all the stuff we're talking about in terms of movies and development and streaming and all the rest is completely useless. You have to have a good core platform. And comics are so cheap to produce. If you're a movie company, you'd be insane not to push this, because you can try things out. You can put smart people down there to get training and test out, and you can feed this market at a fraction of the cost of the movies. And that's what they should be doing, and hopefully what the smart people will be doing. But they just should care about comics.
Yeah. And the problem is, though, their way of looking at caring about comics is making them look incredibly cheaply filmed.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about big ideas and big concepts. So instead of having having to sit there and figure out what, giant million or $50 million set piece to use in their movie, they already figured out the one that was the most popular in the comics.
Yeah.
You can write a $50 million set piece in every single issue. Just find out the one that was the most popular.
Yeah.
But
no, it's absolutely perfectly made for them. And a couple people get this. I think actually Feige gets this, and that's why they've been somewhat successful. And that's why maybe the move to him taking more control over the comics, I think we will see more of this. Hey, let's try out some stuff and see how it plays out. It's a smart way to go about business. It's just, it starts from the platform up. And too often the comics come across, and the people running the comics more likely. And I think I'll lay this blame directly on Joe Quesada and Dan Didio, both, which seem to have almost an inferiority complex to the movies. So they try and kind of fake up that they're bigger than they are in the comics, and the comics suffer as a result. You don't take care of your platform, and your ambitions, unfortunately, they seem like they're being displayed to everyone. Everyone, all the readers see this attempt that just feels very, very hollow. And that's, you gotta hide that. You gotta make your platform look really, really great, and like you care about it, and you don't care about the movies. All you care about that. I think Jeff Johns did that very well. He clearly had ambitions for going upward into movies and other places, but you never got the sense in reading his comics that he just wanted out. And you do get that from a lot of others.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that is the kind of infectious quality of comics, and this is the positive, in the positive light of this, is that there wouldn't even be talk about a bloodshot movie if it weren't for the fact that Vin Diesel fell in love with the character.
Yeah.
And that is the type of quality that I think it's going to be artist driven going forward as far as in the indie comics are concerned. If indie comics are going to be successful, coming out, and as far as on the big screen and more expansion as far as indie comic works, it's going to require those artists. Artists in the term of actors and big, big personality as far as Hollywood. It's going to require those big artists to come forward and say, hey, I really like this. This is something I want to be involved in. I want to work with. And I think that as long as they can attract those types of people, and those people see, the fan passion behind those particular projects, in comic book form, that you're going to see more of them come out as far as on the big screen and in streaming services. So
this is a really interesting discussion and take. Percy, did you ever talk about why Marvel's going to acquire Dark Horse?
It's a longer conversation. I think that the simple part of it is that Dark Horse does have a number of properties that Marvel and Disney have desired for some time. There's been attempts to kind of get engaged with that. I think Dark Horse, kind of in the context of this whole discussion we're having, they need to find either a more solid platform. They don't want to accidentally slip into becoming IDW, which would be a risk if they're not careful. I think Marvel and Disney as a whole are looking to expand and get a bunch of properties that are clean. And when I say clean, not tangled up in a bunch of other legal nonsense. Dark Horse has always been very good at that. And their properties probably fit kind of the Disney Plus broader Empyre world very, very well. They're harmonious in a way that maybe they're not as much with with Warner Bros. As a whole. There's examples everywhere. But that's the long and the short of it. We should do a deeper video right now, but I think we should interrupt everything we're saying right now to say thanks to Jeff.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jeff Stafford, for the $9.99 super chat. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the conversation. Have a great weekend. We appreciate you coming in here and stopping by. Hitting that like button, showing your support, and being an active member of the chat. It's nice. We get 60 hardcore comic fans in here to talk about this stuff, because we're all so passionate about it, and we really appreciate you stopping by and helping support the channel with your super chat and supporting us. So thank you very much, and have a great weekend yourself, and hope to see you next weekend, buddy. So does that wrap up our indie comics discussion?
The only thing that I will say is I'm going to be very curious to see what kind of numbers Saga pulls on its return. Whether or not I wasn't really reading it, but whether or not it's still going to have the same kind of demand after being gone for 18 months. You know, that's I'm curious.
It's that's a hefty delay, and I mean its fan base is very, very loyal, and it did end in a pretty major cliffhanger. I would say that is gonna bring a lot of people back to it. The questions are, is how much will Image promote it? They're definitely going to, but they've moved on in a couple directions, in a couple ways. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then the ending that they put out, or the cliffhanger, I would say they put out. Well, I don't know, spoilers, 18 months. What's the duration on spoilers? They killed off a pretty major, well-loved character, it seemed. So unfortunately, either he didn't actually die, and that is then people feel like they're being jerked around, or he's dead and they've killed off somebody that they really liked in the series. And so where do they go from here? That's it'll be interesting to see. I think it will do well, but 18 months is a huge hiatus, and I think a lot of people probably in the comic industry are watching that, asking the same question, and maybe even thinking to themselves, maybe I could do an 18-month hiatus. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let's just put a bow on the indie comic stuff. Doc, what do you think about the prospects of indie comics in 2020? I personally think it's actually going to get bigger. I think the arrival of Scott Snyder is gonna raise the profile for Image Comics. I think Saga returning is actually going to be a hit. I think that fan base is fervent, and I think there are some other smaller guys that are coming in and making some noise. Do you see that see it that way as well?
I think it's going to be a very significant reorganization, and I think to a degree it's going. I still see contraction, but I see contraction in volume and increase in quality as a result. I think the market's going to trim a lot of its fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's going to have to. It's going to have to. There's going to have to be a lot of fat trimming. I mean, we're talking about, it's insane, really. There's not any other way to describe it. You've got too many disparate titles out there from 1,000 different little publishers that are selling
900 copies.
Yeah, 2,500 on a good week, or a good month. It's ridiculous, and it's been like that for a really long time. And I've always kind of wondered, how do you stay in business? And I know it's got to be passion. There's a great passion for what they do. They want this product to get out, and they're excited for it. But it just never gets seen by the customers. And there's going to have to be that consolidation that we talked about before. And as the market kind of shrinks, as there are fewer stores, it's it's the nature of the beast that these titles, these little companies if they're going to survive, then they're going to have to bond together. What do you think, Perch?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a combination. I think you will see consolidation. I agree. I think you will see a lot of the fringe kind of vanish. The fringe being kind of the really low selling, the stuff that are vanity projects, for lack of a better word, the stuff that's really not ready for prime time. I think those people will disappear or fade back onto the web. I think you'll see a good consolidator online who will offer something as like a digital library that these kind of really, really low end comic artists can start using. I think they'll all be happy, but nobody will really look at it. And then I think with that consolidation, you'll get what Wes said. I think you're going to see a bigger year of all the people kind of mid-tier and above are going to do better. I think the attention will focus there. There will be a sharpening of what gets promoted. And if you're, Skybound is clicking along really, really well, and I think that's only going to get better. I think all these little efforts that are well liked. I made the comment. I think Vault is doing a great job with Money Shot in terms of their very experimental things with their marketing, and it is working. And so I think you're just going to see that applied to every creator they think can make numbers, be reliable, do well, get an audience, and all the focus will go there. So 50% will do better, 50% will kind of vanish. That's my prediction.
What kind of? I wish that this particular area of the country that I'm in. I mean, it's very, very strong as far as Marvel and DC are concerned, but we just do not have that much as far as indie attraction. I wish I could say otherwise, but it's just stuff like Saga does really well. The larger indie titles, Image does pretty well. Valiant did do well. Now the back issue market in Valiant is gone again. So I'm very hopeful as far. I don't think it could get a lot worse than it did for 2019 as far as I'm talking about in this particular area here, as far as kind of the drop off from indie interest. It seemed like it was building up for a long time, and then it kind of dropped off into 2019. But I think that a lot of that can change. I am seeing interest in new titles like Philadelphia, the Vampire State Building. Shockingly, people are going, where can I get these? What can you order this? And I haven't really heard that as much in a while. So Scout Comics, I want to see more from them. If it's I'm hoping that the solution, like you were talking about, was going to be a central publisher where a lot of these smaller, for the smaller titles, smaller companies can go to get something, to get these titles put out. But I just don't know if it'll ever filter down into the retail space, into the comic book store space.
No, and it's interesting, kind of back to what we talked about earlier about comic shops in different regions. I've got a ton of connections in Portland. Obviously, being in Seattle, being very close to there, go down there all the time. Had invested money in a shop down there and co-ran it for a while with somebody. And the story, people are like, oh, well, the Pacific Northwest. I hear this all the time. Usually as an insult, like, oh, you live in that liberal fantasy town, and they're buying all indie stuff, and your world is just completely abnormal to the real world. And
I didn't mean it that way.
I know you don't. And by the way, they're not wrong in a lot of ways. With comics in particular, all that big Pacific Northwest indie scene. At the end of the day, I am pretty confident that if somebody from Florida and Tennessee and Colorado and Seattle compared receipts, it would be within 10% of each other in terms of the new comic sales. The indie market up here in Seattle, it's not like indie comics are flying off the shelves because everybody loves those kind of navel-gazing looks at, what I ate for lunch. That's not selling. It's not selling in Tennessee. It's not selling in Seattle. So, I mean, I've had in the past signings from local creators who are doing their books that are very, very niche, and 20 copies go out the door with somebody there signing and almost guilting. They're like, hey, we got a pro here with their pin out. You're going to buy it, right? And sell 20 copies. Meanwhile, the schlock down the shelf of this issue of X-Men selling 200 copies. So I mean, it's like it's the same everywhere by and large.
I think it's just the perception, because of the it is the more progressive area of the country. So sure. People just have that perception, and whether it's true or not, as far as comics are concerned,
comics are comics.
Comics are comics.
I mean, the way people vote's one thing, but what people actually pick up, buy, and consume tends to be the same. And that's the big myth, I think, that a lot of people, certainly on the indie scene, will perpetuate. Like, oh, it's a red state, middle America thing. They're who cares about them? We're selling other places. No, you're not.
I do wish that we were more as far as the as far as the Pacific West like that. I do wish that we had more of the taste for that type of product here, because it is interesting, it is new, and I do like I said, I really went crazy for stuff like these Savage Shores and for Vampire State Building, and I want to see more of it. I really, really do. I love that stuff, and especially the new horror, and I just it's a situation where I wish I kind of had I wish it kind of had a little bit as far as that's concerned, as far as that interest from that area. But from what you're saying, that
nobody does.
yeah, nobody really has that in. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, guys,
Oh,
that
well.
was a fabulous conversation about where you think the comic industry is going in 2020. Lots of really good stuff to be excited about. Dawn of X is, we got Wolverine, Giant Size X-Men. We got some interesting stuff with DC Comics. I think 3 Jokers is going to be off the chain. I think the Greg Capullo, Scott Snyder event is probably going to be very well received. More Scott Snyder on the indie scene is going to do nothing but grow things. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Now it's time to talk to the viewers and give some comic book recommendations for this week. Doc, what are you suggesting that the viewers read this week?
I'm going to say the same thing that I'm going to say that if your local shop actually got Marauders 5, go buy it. Definitely Punisher Soviet, because my shop didn't get that either. And I'm going to get very angry about this.
There were problems this week.
Yeah, there's serious problems. I agree.
And, but you know what? I would say definitely X-Men number 4, Punisher Soviet. And you know what? I'm going to give them a shout out again because I haven't done it recently. If you haven't been reading it, it's issue 5 was probably one of my favorite issues that I read last year. Was Rags.
Yeah.
Go pick it up. It's it's not just a zombie titty book. It's really not.
It's not. No, Rags is great. Absolutely good.
It is.
For the fans, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They are putting out a great product.
It really is. And you know what? Again, I will recommend, I don't know if it's coming out this week or next week, Flash Forward, still doing all the job of fixing Wally that Tom King broke. And
bless his heart.
Plus it's got
Wally.
Yeah. Plus it's got Brett Booth's art. Jesus Christ, I can't talk this morning. And Bloodshot, but only if you don't actually read it. Just look at the pictures and make up your own dialogue. This is going to be my mantra forever. If only Tim Seeley could actually effing write.
Oh God, I'm laughing.
Because the guy can't write his way out of a wet paper bag, but Brett Booth's art, goddamn, it makes me forget that there's even writing. Because that book is just gorgeous, and make up your own words. It works better.
All right.
Tim Seeley hates me already, so I don't really care.
Hey, Lee, what are you recommending in the comic shop this week?
Thor number 1 was the big book, as far as, I mean, how could it not be? It's Kate's, and I know that they go to the well on that one a lot, Marvel, especially lately. Oh, it's Donny Cates. Donny Cates has a new book out. You need to buy it, and they've got the big sign waving and everything like that. And it is really good, actually. There's a lot of talk on the net, as far as in some channels that were like, oh, this is, it's not that great. This is not.
That's what Bert said.
And I liked it. I loved it, and and Zach, I think, kind of went off on it, but I see a lot of potential there. I like the idea of I like the Thor Herald of Galactus, angle there, and we'll see. I think it looks like a good book going forward. I'm hopeful for it. And Punisher Soviet.
Absolutely. All right, Perch. I was teasing with you. I watched your review. You like Thor number 1. You didn't like as much as I did, but you were definitely championing that book.
No, it's a good book. I mean, it's a good read. There's some stuff going on there that's just you're in for a new cycle. And if you didn't particularly care for how Jason Aaron was going, then this is a different take on the character, and they're committing to it. So I think it's a good book. I wish people. I was chuckling to myself. I didn't know that Zach did a review on it. I'm not surprised. Of course, he reviews everything, but But no matter whether it's me or Wes or Zach or whoever it happens to be, for the love of God, pick up the book and like it or don't like it for yourself. I'm here. I don't know how to speak it for Wes, but I'm here to just give you some general thoughts on a book. Don't let somebody else make up your whole mind for you. Just see if you like the book. But sorry, I always feel like I do this wrong, so I get my list prepared for the coming week, not the past week. So
No.
no,
That's fine.
Thor's good. So I will continue to break tradition. Then I will do a better job next time, Wes. I'm sorry. This coming week, what you can look forward to, we did the brand new Batman with a new creative team. Check it out. That's going to be new and exciting. You're going to like the direction or not. Will be interesting to see here is how much setup we're getting, because we're really getting a pretty shortened run before it's going to get interrupted. So what does that look like? That will be interesting to see. Hawkman is going to be a great issue this week. I've seen a preview of that, and it's just great. So I would definitely check that out. And then I would say just stick with Marvel. If you have been going along with New Mutants and you're a bit confused that the story keeps shifting from space to Earth and you like the space story better because that's New Mutants you remember, then I think we're back in space. I haven't seen that issue yet, but I think we're back there. So, back to that storyline, something to check out. Amazing Spider-Man is going to have a little bit in it. So if you're a collector, I think 37 is going to have something that's going to kind of hint toward the bigger event to come, and maybe some things going on with Mephisto. It's just little tiny bits, but that tease is there. Who knows? And then, of course, we have a new X-Force out, and that's looking really good this week with some Forge and some other stuff going on. So I would recommend those.
That's be great.
Did Amazing Spider-Man finally stop getting all crossover happy that I can jump back into it?
Yes-ish.
Okay.
It's still, it's setting up a lot of stuff. I think it hasn't, we're starting something kind of new now. It's very much it's very much a book where they're starting to tease some of the things that are to come. So if you're interested in what's to come, I think this is probably something to hop back in on.
Well, I'm looking for a reason to get back in. I dropped off whenever it started getting all crossover happy. If it's setting up for the future, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the at least the preview bits I've seen of X-Force, if you like, Domino and Forge doing some rough stuff, that is going to be a good book for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So Fiona Wolf is recommending Nexus Omnibus Volume 1, Stellar, Outer Darkness, Blade Runner 2019, Beast and Fanon, Space Bandits, Punchline, Flying Sparks, The Wrong Earth, Oblivion Song, Project Superpowers, White Lily, and Cluster. There's a lot of good stuff in there. You should be reading all that. That's a great list. Thank you very much, Fiona. She's writing her own graphic novel, I believe, at the time at this moment.
All right.
So we're definitely very excited for her.
Yes.
Hope she is doing well in that endeavor and finds a great art partner for that as well. So my recommendations, most people hit all the stuff I would definitely hit. I would, Thor, Punisher Soviet's one of the most intense comics I've read in a long time. And, of course, X-Men #4. Star Wars #1 is fantastic. If you like the original trilogy, it basically puts you right back into the Millennium Falcon with the characters that you love. The banter is just like the movies. The characterization is perfect as far as I'm concerned. The art is a little too photorealistic for me. The Princess Leia's face is a little too spot on, but that was the only distractor. I really enjoyed that. If you like that original trilogy, you're going to like Star Wars #1. And Philadelphia, I think Paley mentioned it earlier, but Rodney Barnes and Jason Sean Alexander is a really cool concept. I think John Adams is the very first vampire instead of Dracula. And it's really cool. I like that comic a lot. The first issue was a little bit better, but the second issue this week was also great. All right. We got anything else in the comments? Looks like we had people talking. All right. Dominic is recommending Flash Forward #4, Shazam #9, Suicide Squad #1, Justice League Dark 18, The Terrifics 23, X-Force Force, and X-Men #4. Tevye is recommending Shazam and Invincible. I think I got everything right. Boom, got it. I want to thank all my guests for being here today. Thank everybody that was in here being a part of the chats and watching us today. We'll see you all next week. Salamat po.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.